So Taylor, I want to welcome you to the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. Glad to be here.
So this exciting new normal we're in, and you're like the greatest kept secret out there, I feel, as a leader in the Washington, D.C. area of technology. I brag about you without you knowing about it frequently, because I think that you're just the way you think about servicing customers and the way you've built out this really incredible association product system that benefits really the entire United States, from the manufacturing and then also or the car dealers, and then I know your ambitions of going across the world. But before we get started, who are you? Talk about your organization, and just so my listener base and video listener really knows who you are.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. So yes, my name is Taylor Mitchell, and I work for the Auto Care Association. And our association, we're a nonprofit trade association, and we really focus on everything that happens to the vehicle once you drive it off the lot. So it's really the people who make the parts, the people who sell and distribute the parts, and the people who throw away the box at the end of it, so in your local shop. And our focus is really on making sure that that supply chain can operate and that consumers have the right to choose where they can take their vehicle to get repaired in the best way that they see fit. So we're different than some trade associations in that we cover that entire supply chain. So it's a lot of stakeholders with a lot of different focuses, but we're able to kind of see across that and help that entire supply chain be more effective and efficient.
So that's really interesting, the supply chain. So how do you, during this crisis time with the corona, how do you look at a supply chain? Like, or is it just the senior team just sitting around a table sort of thinking about all the constituent parts, or do you go through more of a rigorous process of looking at potential impact as your association, communicating this to your members? How does that work?
So we really have a kind of a distributed view of how we interact with our membership. And we really have key personnel throughout the association that focus on different segments of the industry. So be it those suppliers or manufacturers, the people making the parts, to really focus on what are their business needs. And then focusing on, the distributors and the retailers. And then a big part of what my team does is focusing on the business services, the folks who offer, software or different services to everyone across that supply chain. To manage their data and make that better and transfer it back and forth. So we really look to key people to be able to be kind of the subject matter experts on that. And we really partner with our industry. So in everything that we do, we have key industry volunteers that really give us that on the ground feedback that is so critical to help us make decisions on where we need to focus, be it better enabling access to data coming out of the supply chain, what's selling, what's not selling, how many miles are people driving? Not very many right now, but how do we make sure that they can get access to that information? So we really look for that feedback loop within the industry and with key personnel throughout the organization.
Is that feedback loop? I imagine if I bring my car to get it serviced, I could go to a dealership, or I could go to Sam's garage down the street, because I get a certain, practicality to that I might not want to get in a dealership. But ultimately, you got a couple different options for people. How do you get that sort of boots on the ground knowledge? Like, what would you be looking for there? Is it a human experience, or more of you trying to put a system in there to tell you the data that's happening at that endpoint?
That's a great question, and it's a little bit of both. We really focus on trying to get data wherever we can from the supply chain and being able to aggregate that and put that out to the membership. But we also, there's, as you know, and even now we're seeing with this new situation, the face-to-face and in-person, there's nothing really that beats that. And so, especially throughout the membership, there's a lot of people on my team and other teams who have actually come from the industry and who are now working for us. Okay. And part of the what we do, and especially my team this year, was focusing on getting into a shop and actually working behind the counter for a couple days and just keeping that connection to see, hey, what works, what doesn't, how can we incorporate that boots on the ground mentality into what we offer every day and how we evolve our tools to our members. So you can't really beat that, and we're very excited to get back to that very soon, hopefully. But it does take both. You can't simply look at a spreadsheet and get all the answers. There's that human component that you have to kind of meld the two.
So is it, I think it's so great. So I'm just thinking of the garage that I've gone to for 20 years in Annapolis, Maryland, and then sort of the dealer, the newer car that I have that sort of got from the dealer, and sort of you have this, you see the parts trucks that are driving around, dropping parts at Sam's garage and at the dealership. So with this happening, are you what happens if people decide, you know what, I'm going to service my car versus I'm going to go buy a new one? Like, what kind of decisions do you think are going to go through people's minds? Is there going to be sort of a conservative approach, and will there be an impact in your business as a result of that?
Sure. Yeah. Our CEO, actually, he comes from the industry, from the supplier side of things. And he always says our industry, the aftermarket, does good in good times and does great in bad times because of that very reason.
Okay.
You may have more people saying, hey, I have to hold on to this car. So that means I'm going to spend more time, taking it to the local shop, or even doing it in my front yard or backyard, wherever you may be.
Sure.
And that do it yourself. And so, they're buying those parts from their local retailer who they've had that relationship with, or taking it into the shop, again, with those folks that they've built that relationship with. So, we do see in times like these, people hold on to those vehicles for longer. So that does help our side of the business, the aftermarket side.
So are there any decisions that you're really glad you made a year ago, 2 years ago, regarding any parts of the strategy that you had you've been deploying, either cloud or anything like that you think has been a benefit during this time frame, from giving you some of the flexibility you needed, or anything of the sort?
Sure. Yeah, I think, as anyone in the technology space knows, there's not usually a quick fix for things. You have to be kind of planned out and have some strategy behind what you're doing. And we really did start thinking about cloud being number one in in how we were going to approach things a couple of years ago. So that really helped us in this, and we kind of went all in on the Microsoft 365 products. So that made it easy, and just some of the basics of making sure everyone had a laptop, and having that as their permanent workstation. So it made the transition, that transition, I should say, to moving everyone remote wasn't the roadblock, right? So we had the infrastructure in place that people could really focus on what the members needed to hear, the information they needed, and staff wasn't worried about, okay, how am I going to sign on? How am I going to get my email? How am I going to get to all these documents that I have? So I think that really helped in our transition, and that really kind of set people up to be successful and really hit the ground running. As soon as all this information started flooding in, we could immediately launch the webinars and launch these different GoToMeeting things for our members to get them the information that they need.
It's really, you wouldn't necessarily know this because you're sort of like knee deep in it, but from an outside perspective, and having worked with you for a while, your decision making on Azure, I think, was about 2 years in front of most people. And not just being in Azure, but being significantly there with major systems, and then not just there with your major systems in your app dev, in your strategy, but also there with security. Because those are two different things. Those are things that really trip people up, as they'll app dev their way into it, but then they don't layer the security on top. So they end up, it really gets kind of messy. And you had a really, you were in front of the curve on both, and you're not trying to re-engineer that right now, which I think puts you in a huge positive position.
Well, I appreciate that. We have a great team, and we're seeing it now with all of these pressures applied. But that infrastructure, and what we've done with Azure, like you said, has really helped us be agile and nimble. And then having good partners like you, who help us with the security, it takes that stressor off of our minds and lets us really focus on how do we deliver the best product to the member. And we're seeing that we need to shift and really reprioritize some of our product work. And so we're able to do that pretty flexibly with, shifting things around, but we have the infrastructure there that can support that. And it was a big leap for us to go to Azure. It was not something that, we kind of had ever dealt with, had ever moved forward with. So it was a leap for the organization. We're, in hindsight is 2020. So we're really happy with where we're at right now. But I think it really did set us up to be more successful in a situation like this and deliver better products and services to our members.
Yeah, and just so everybody listening, and I think what I think, just from an outsider, just having worked on those security elements, what I like is that you now can play offense. Like if your CEO says, I want to go this direction, and you need to spin up and not use your internal infrastructure, but you want to spin up Azure, and you can marshal your development group in that direction. And then your architecture for security just follows you to that. Like you're not having to figure it out as you go, which is like trying to play defense and offense at the same time is hard. I like that you are in a position where you can respond, especially the next 100 days. Like most organizations are going to want to be trying to capture as much revenue as possible and cut as much expense as possible. And I like that you've been in front of that. I think that gives you an advantage of being able to respond quickly. And so I think sometimes people think, well, I'm just going to move to the cloud. I don't think the cloud, nobody wants to move to the cloud. They want to move to the cloud for the benefits it gives them. And I think you've knowing with what you're trying to do, I think that gives you a huge potential value. What are you going to stick with the United States as a market, or do you think that there's equal? I guess since the world, this is like the one time we've had one worldwide enemy. Is there a potential now worldwide for you?
There absolutely is, yes. And we are continuing to develop and release products that focus on getting part information passed back and forth, no matter where you reside in the world. And if you look at the aftermarket supply chain, it is very global, much like anything now. It's a global marketplace for everyone, and our industry is no different. I would say it's probably maybe more so than many others. So we do have to go global in our offerings. And that really, going back to Azure, was one of the things that we looked at early on is, can this support us as we try and ramp up, as we try and evolve, as we try to break down these geographic barriers? What are the tool sets that we have in place to support us so that doesn't become a barrier to us as we move forward? And so, we're continuing to push those forward because that's, our membership needs that. And as they continue to evolve their businesses, we have to bring those services from these different markets and that data from these different markets to them. So we're very much still pushing forward on the global front because that gives our customers, our members, the ability to expand their business offerings around the world.
Oh, that's really cool. So if we're talking a year from now, as we wrap up, if we're talking 1 year from now, so it's 4/10/2021, and we're looking back, what has been the one leadership element that you think has been your biggest strength over the past year that has been something that you are really happy about, that you can look back and go, you know what, I'm glad that either I had that native ability or I developed this new leadership. Is there any one thing that you think, looking back, has been the thing that's been most successful for you?
That's a great question. I think technology has evolved so much in the IT profession in general, especially over the last couple of years, and moving into different word, digital transformation, and all of these things that are now becoming a part of that role and how we look at it. I think one of the things that it always comes back to, and one of the things that I've seen and am really seeing through this process, is in what we do, I view really being successful as enabling that human connection, be it business to business or colleague to colleague. It's really something that we have a great opportunity to not be a roadblock in this process, but really make sure that the tools and services are there to enable that connection and facilitate it in a safe, secure way. And so I think that's really rewarding when you can do that effectively. And I think we're able to partner with different colleagues in different departments, in different areas of expertise, so much differently than we have in the past. And IT is no longer kind of that standalone, they're in that little corner in the back office, but you really have the opportunity to partner with your marketing team, partner at the executive level. And that's really rewarding and something that continues to evolve. And I think if we can really focus on how do we enable that connection, how do we enable people to be better at what they do, making them more successful, I think is really rewarding and something that we're in a unique position to be able to do.
You just gave me the title to this. This is what the title's going to be. And the reason why I love this is because, first of all, I haven't had a conversation about human connection yet in this way with the meetings, conversations I've been having. But I've been stunned that the marketing realized how challenged marketing communication is with IT. And I've gotten this from several different folks recently that are like, this is a good opportunity, to really tighten up the communication with our marketing and our sales, because that's essentially what we really need to lean into. And IT can be a huge enabler for that. So I love, and you talked about executives as well. So anyway, I only asked you for a short time to a little bit of wisdom, and we're up at that against that time frame. But I really appreciate you jumping on this conversation, Taylor.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I think this is great. I think as everyone has said, we're all in this together. So it's nice to hear other IT professionals and what they have to share. Really, I think it'll make us all better.
It will. Thank you very much, and
Thanks so much.
we will be in touch shortly.